Just before morning settles over this part of the Kent countryside, there's a very particular feeling to it. Not the polished quiet you get in some of the wealthier commuter villages closer to London. This is proper countryside silence. Birds before traffic. Dog walkers cutting through woodland paths near Nickley Wood while the lanes are still empty. And that's exactly why more people searching for a slower pace of life in the southeast are starting to pay attention to places like Shadoxhurst. Because somehow, despite feeling deeply rural and slightly hidden away from modern life, you're still only a short drive from one of the fastest commuter rail links into London in the southeast. But there's a contradiction running through it, because although London remains surprisingly accessible from here, daily life still feels deeply connected to the landscape around it, with relatively limited street lighting compared with more built-up areas. Evenings here can feel almost untouched by modern life. Historically, this whole area sat within the old Weald, dense woodland that once covered huge parts of Kent and Sussex. Even today, the landscape still feels enclosed within that history, with winding lanes, thick tree cover, and open countryside. And that sense of separation shapes everyday life here far more than people initially expect. Because by the end of this video, you'll know whether Shadoxhurst is the peaceful countryside reset people dream about, or whether real life here eventually feels just a bit too quiet. What makes this place different from a lot of Kent villages is that it genuinely feels lived in. It's not built around tourism, boutique cafes, or countryside aesthetics. Life here is school runs, muddy boots, dog walks, and people actually living in the countryside rather than performing it. Saturday mornings usually revolve around routines more than destinations. Farm shops, woodland walks, or lunches at places like the King's Head that somehow stretch well into the afternoon. Socially, life here tends to revolve around a handful of familiar routines. Village events, countryside pubs nearby, dog walks, and neighbours gradually getting to know each other over time. But the adjustment people sometimes underestimate isn't the quiet itself, it's the level of self-sufficiency. If you expect everything within walking distance, it's not that kind of place. This is very much car-dependent living, and that becomes especially noticeable with commuting. On paper, getting into London is excellent. You drive for around 5 miles, and from Ashford International, high-speed services reach St Pancras in around 38 minutes during peak times. You are still swapping tube platforms and city convenience for country lanes, station car parks, and much more planning around everyday routines. For hybrid workers, that balance often works brilliantly. But if you're commuting into London 5 days a week, the logistics can start to wear over time. Property-wise, Shadoxhurst sits in a highly practical middle ground within the Kent countryside market. In Smarden, similar family homes here are often around 20 to 25% more expensive, largely because it carries more of that classic premium postcard village aesthetic. Compared with Bethersden, values here are usually slightly softer, with Bethersden often commanding roughly a 10% premium because of its stronger village centre, school reputation, and more established countryside identity. High Haldon has a greater concentration of larger, detached executive-style homes, and newer developments can push values around 15% above Shadoxhurst depending on specification and location. What buyers are really paying for here is space, privacy, and that feeling of being tucked away from modern noise without becoming completely disconnected from London. Property comparisons are indicative and based on a broad review of current listings, publicly available market data, and general local trends. Actual values will vary depending on property type, condition, exact location, and timing of sale. Families here typically rely on nearby village schools for education, which naturally becomes part of daily life. You get access to strong schools across the wider Ashford area, and a pace of life that feels noticeably calmer than most commuter towns. There's also less of that subtle status competition you find in some parts of the southeast. Life here feels more grounded in ordinary routines. The trade-off usually comes later when children become teenagers and daily independence starts to matter more. So really, who is Shadoxhurst for? If you want walkability, nightlife, constant activity, or everything on your doorstep, it will probably feel too quiet after a while. But for the right person, Shadoxhurst offers something becoming surprisingly rare in the southeast. Space to breathe, genuine countryside calm, and a version of village life that still feels authentic rather than curated. Shadoxhurst isn't countryside designed for weekends. It's countryside people still properly live in. And maybe that's ultimately the appeal. Not escaping modern life entirely, just slowing it down enough to hear yourself think again. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video useful. Help me create more videos like this by hitting subscribe. If you'd like to check the videos featuring Smarden, Bethersden or High Haldon, you can find them in the playlist below.